here. If you are one of those people who knows that Joey and Stu, and sometimes Cookie, if you did know that, tend to write most of the King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard bass lines, and as such, you diminish Lukey as a bassist, you are not welcome here. Okay? You clearly haven't been to a concert, or if you have, you didn't even pay attention to the bass, because that man, that beautiful man can play. But not only can he play, but in King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Stu, Joey, and Cookie also tend to play bass, and they've got characteristic styles. I can't discern them too much, but in the end, hey buddy, stop biting my stuff. Get out of my cords. Sorry, I have a cat. In the end, if you are in a band that happens to have the second coming of Paul McCartney, and he writes a bass line for you for a song that could changes between 500 different time signatures, I think it's okay if you say, yeah, I'll play that bass line. So I'm a Lukey fan here. I'm also a fan of the other members of the band. So I've been playing bass for a year now. I got really into it after Gizztober last year, particularly Ice Death. The jammy nature of it, I was like just trying to piece together what was going on, and really inspired me to learn bass and continue to play it. So I'm going to hook up here. I'm going to be pulling up the albums as I go. Prepare for off-key singing of bass lines as well, and let's just get started. I know I gotta start moving these cats. Dude, Willoughby Beach has bass. Okay. Is there that much more to say about the bass on Willoughby Beach? I don't know. Can you remember a bass line from it? It's the early surf rock stuff. I'm a fan of it. Even Willoughby Beach, I've mentioned Danger Money in the past. I enjoy listening to that song. I can listen to it all the time. But the bass on this album isn't particularly notable. Which brings us to 12 Bar Brews. 12 Bar Brews, one of the only song I learned how to play it on it, right? That's on this, yeah, the opener, Elbow. Like, there's like Cutthroat Boogie, Sleepwalker. There's some decent songs on here for bass, but I think that there's not that much interesting going on in it. And I want to talk about other albums more. So I'm going to put that in It Has Bass tier as well. And then we're going to move on to Eyes Like the Sky. Eyes Like the Sky, I'm thinking about the bass line in my head. My boy is going off. The bass line that I have in my head is Year of Our Lord, like the I know that sounds not right. But Eyes Like the Sky, it's a very misunderstood, debated album by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. It's an audiobook, but there's really good instrumentation throughout. And to think that the bass lines here really help with the Western vibe, I think that it's creative and solid bass playing. I'm not going to put it probably very high in the bass tier, but it's going to go into the bass tier. There's songs on here that I think are worth learning. It's fun to play, and it's fun to listen to as a bass player as well. Now, we move on to Head on Pill. As someone who watches bass tabs on YouTube, I see a lot of requests for Head on Pill as a song for people to tab. But really, all that the song is like it's just G and like a G arpeggio. There's not really that much going on with it. That being and similar, Float Along, Fill Your Lungs, one of their best songs, at least in my opinion. At the end is mostly just bam, bam, bam from the bass. So both of those are not too exciting. But in the middle, I think, is where the bass shines on this album. And like, let me mend the past, bam, boom, boom, bam, boom, bam, or what was it? I'm not a man unless I have one. The bum, ba bum 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 bum, ba da ba dum ba dum bum, ba dum bum 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 bum. I also remember 30 Past 7 has a pretty decent one. It's not like extreme bass, like trickery. You know, these are normal songs in 4/4 that are pretty slow. But I'd say it's got pretty good bass. Pretty good bass. I enjoy listening to it, even if think people are misguided wanting like a head-on pill tab. 16 minutes of G. Okay. Moving on to the first legendary bass lines from King Gizzard. I'm in your mind, fuzz. Of course, we're all thinking. It's notable. I mean, for this album, for me, this is where Gizz really sonically jump beyond where they have before. It's more psychedelic experimentation, and I feel like the bass holds the role of keeping everything together and tied, which means that kind of like the criticism I was giving before. The bass lines aren't as intricate as they are in later albums. They are often it's like a repeated riff for extended periods of time, but that head on the Mind Fuzz riff pumps me up every time. If I can hear just that and it gets me going, and I'm sure that it's pretty similar for a lot of you. And then later in the album, like Slow Jam 1, like even though there's not that much going on, it's got good bass. Yeah. Like so these are songs where the bass playing is relatively simplistic, but I think it all does really well. Like even the variations between the I'm in your mind fuzz, I'm not in your mind, and cellophane, and so on. I enjoy listening to and duplicating myself, even though it's not that hard. So I'm gonna put Mind Fuzz in bass tier. Oddments. Oddments has a few bass lines that I like. We open with Aluda Majaka. The it's the driving force of the song. There's like horses neighing in the background and shit. It really, to me, it sets me off on the right foot. I overrate Oddments because of Aluda Majaka, and I overrate it also for Hot Wax. Boom boom bow boom 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 bow boom boom. I just the bass lines in those songs, they're just fun, and I think the fun of Gizz is shown through with the bass lines of Oddments. But I've got to acknowledge that just because I like boom 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 boom, like that's a pretty basic bass line. Hot Wax is a pretty basic bass line, and it's not like they're tying together these incredible sequences like they were in I'm in Your Mind Fuzz. So I'm just going to put it in the regular bass tier. But I do prefer it to float along. And I know, I'll survive. Quarters. Quarters, like, even everyone probably, if you're watching this right now, you probably know the river, like, the doom da 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 doom da 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 boom da da boom da da da, the classic 5/4. But I'm like even thinking like, what is it? Lonely Steel Shoot Flyer. Da 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 da. Like that. There's here again. There's simplicity and it's like repetition over the course of these 10-minute long songs. But they set the bass lines in this album set the vibe. I think that they're all of them are good. Every song on this album has good bass. Even like Infinite Rise, I don't like very much as a song, but even that has good bass. I gotta say, I'm gonna put it here for now, even though yeah, it's simple, a little repetitive. I'm gonna put it at the bottom of bass for the minute. Let's see if we move it around. Now, moving on. Paper Mache Dream Balloon. Paper Mache Dream Balloon. It opens with that fantastic bass fill on. It's like the boom 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 boom. Or that's at least the rhythm of it. I can't get the notes. I can't pull a tune out of the air too easily. But you got Sense right after that. Bone has a mini bass solo in it. That's pretty good. It's pretty complex. I struggle to play it. And you got some fun songs on here too, like Bitter Boogie. Any Gizz song that has boogie in the title is going to be fun. So you know you got some good shuffle feel in that bass line. I have a fantastic. I mean, this is biased. The song is not that complicated and the bass is pretty simple, but I love playing along the trapdoor. But in the end, like looking at the albums that are coming up, I know that was when you start at the beginning, you're thinking about the early stuff and comparing it there. But with what's coming up, I'm gonna to put this at the top of bass. I know it's got that sweet little solo, but just let me continue. Let me talk about ones where I think that they start really improving. Now we get to Nonagon Infinity. Nonagon Infinity. Robot Stop bass line isn't memorable, but it really sets you up. The boom ba ba boom ba ba da da boom da 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 da. So that sets you up for what the pummeling that you're gonna get throughout it. Personally, the bass kicks into high gear with this album. Like the first time I listened to it, the transition into Big Fig Wasp. I mean, first you get the Stu scream as part of this transition, which just fills you with dopamine. It's like when the woman screams in "Gimme Shelter," if you know what I'm talking about. Any other 27-year-olds who grew up like in classic rock here? But like it pulls you in, and then there's like the dum bum 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 bum. It's the transition. It's a twist on the theme that it had before, but that Big Fig Wasp bass line kills. Gamma Knife I play all the time. It's so fun. That one's not very complicated, but you're holding together like it switches between like an 11, 8, a 5. It's got a 7 in there and a 4. So there's consistency, but it's fun. You really get to like you lock into the emphasis. When there's like the important notes that you're supposed to be imitating. Like I hear drummers sometimes mention it. You get to emphasize the hard hitting parts of the song too. It's great. Switching into People Vultures, you get that main riff. The People Vultures. The first one it's got this cool syncopation and like a ghost note right before for like the I'm a big fan of People Vultures too. Skipping a couple. Invisible Face. Oh, like I think there was like a KEXP or a live show that I watched, and Invisible Face started, and the camera went right to Lukey. Like they knew what they were doing, and then right after that, Wah Wah. Well, that's a great first bass song for King Gizzard to learn, and it's just a fun time. It's very simple. You're just climbing up and down arpeggios, but I love Wah Wah. I gotta say, Nonagon Infinity has bass. Okay. It's not very. It's like when we got crazy time signatures, insane instrumentals in the lo-fi, soupy environment too. You have to tie it all together, and I think that the bass lines on Nonagon Infinity tie it together and then some. Moving on to Flying Microtonal Banana. A little bit of background on Flying Microtonal Banana specifically is so when they made it, of course, Stu had the legendary Flying Microtonal Banana, but the rest of the band members did not have instruments, the microtonal instruments. You know, famously, not maybe famously, you should see Joey's current microtonal guitar. It's the same one that he had back then. I think it's like a custom one. He named it Dickhead, if I remember right. It's got like tape on it where he wrote Dickhead. And it's really cool. I love that guitar. If anything happens to it, I'll be sad. But then I know that Lukey had like stick-on frets where he'd put it in the bass. What I'm trying to get at is the ability for the bass to be microtonal on this album was rather limited. Similarly, because it was a microtonal rock album for general audiences, which doesn't really exist normally, a lot of the bass lines on here are simpler. Like, Rattlesnake is just the like that thing the whole time, which is fun. But it's kind of going back to the head-on pill situation. My favorite on here, especially because mainly the opening, is Nuclear Fusion, where it's climbing up through the microtonal notes. Apparently, that was very difficult to play live back then, because Luke didn't have a bass for it in particular. But at the end, for Flying Microtonal Banana, I'm not very inspired as a bassist listening to this album. As just a music fan in general, obviously I am. I love Flying Microtonal Banana, but I'm gonna put it in. It has bass tier. I'm gonna put it above Head on Pill though. I do. To be clear, I actually really like the bass. I like the bass on everything that isn't in the It Has Bass tier. Like I enjoy listening to it. Now to Murder of the Universe. I took a long drive yesterday, and I figured I'd be doing this tier list today. So I re-listened to Murder of the Universe in preparation because I was like, the Alter Beast, Alter Me suite. I can't remember the bass. It's gotta be good. It's pretty good. We're going back to the Nonagon Infinity. There's so much complexity and crazy time signatures that these bass lines have to really tie it together. I'm not gonna try to pull the tones out of nowhere. When you got tritones and minor seconds being thrown in there, I'm not tonally great for pulling a tune out of nowhere. I shouldn't try it, but the bass in the Alter Beast, Alter Me suite, it's exhilarating, it's uncomforting, it really sets you into the groove that the songs are trying to put you in, which is saying something, because those songs are complex and they're intentionally nasty. So in the middle of the album, we get a little bit of a reprise of the "I'm in Your Mind" fuzz, and a little bit of "People Vultures" as well. But I can't count that towards this album. But for me, when "Murder of the Universe" shines on the back end. Back end being like the whole story of Hantumi and Murder of the Universe, opening with Digital Black. It's like the boom boom ba 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 ba. Like that's fun. You know, space normally it's much less complicated than the Alter Beast, Alter Me, but that's a great time. Vomit Coffin, I think similarly, but for my favorite off this album is Murder of the Universe, the title track. That's just a Phrygian scale, also like do do do. I can't pull that out of nowhere. Maybe I should do the thing where I pull out the bass and I got a full screen, but I can't. Just trust me, or listen to it. Listen to it yourself. I'm talking about Murder of the Universe has incredible bass. I think I want to put it in bass tier, and I'm going to put it above Mind Fuzz for how it's able to guide song along, set the feel, and I love how the tone and the note choice and just the feel of especially chapter 3 of this, and particularly the title track Murder of the Universe. Polygon Wonderland, I felt like recently I felt I was going to be putting this a little bit lower than I expected, because a lot of the bass lines on here are like there's like a blues box on bass where you have like the root note, the octave, and then like the fifth. So the root, fifth, and octave, that's like a power chord kind of sound. But then there's like a minor second. If though all those the minor seventh, sorry, the minor seventh, that's the Nonagon Infinity note, like da 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 da, like do da, like that's the octave, and then the da 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 da, that's the minor seventh. So a lot of the bass lines on this are really just hinging on that. Just trying to set the groove. But as I've continued playing bass and learning more and more songs off this album, I realized like I can't stop. Okay, they're so good, even if it's repetitive and like parts of Crumbling Castle. You're playing the same boom ba 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 boom ba 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 for a while. It's got that beautiful solo in it. You really get to dig into the groove, and it's crazy because that song has insane polyrhythms that you're able to tie it together so well with these groovy bass lines. Crumbling Castle is great. I love the bass to Polygon Wonderland. That's a song in 5/4 mostly, like the typically songs in 5/4 have that river style thing. It's called like a clave and wah wah, where it's like almost every song in 5/4 has that, but Polygon Wonderland has this, which is really fun to play along to, and that's another pretty simple song to learn how to play, at least early on with the bass, that I think it's enjoyable. I still enjoy playing it now. Deserted Dunes, Welcome Weary Feet, the that's a classic. It's a testament to Lukey's stamina and accuracy, even though they don't play that live too much. And it has one of my favorite little riffs at the end, like the ba 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 da da ba da 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 ba da ba thing. I'm so sorry that I can't hit a note. I wish that I had perfect pitch in this moment. In general, I don't wish I had perfect pitch. I don't know if you know this. Sorry about the pivot. If you have perfect pitch, like you have it for like a couple decades, but then after a couple decades, it starts to deteriorate. Meaning, and what that means is not that your hearing goes from perfect pitch to normal pitch. You actually hear like an A note, or like an A sharp becomes like an A half sharp. It like your ear deviates a little bit, and everything sounds wrong, and that's nightmare fuel. There's also a lot of other weird stuff with perfect pitch, where if you hear like if you have a song and then you change the key of the song, it sounds different to someone with perfect pitch. To be honest, that actually sounds kind of cool, and like they can kind of, I don't know, I'd be interested to hear how they choose a key with that knowledge, because for me it's kind of the same. Obviously, if you go down lower, it gets a little, you know what I'm getting at. But those are a couple interesting things I know about perfect pitch. Moving back, I don't know how much this can help me. I'm putting it. Oh, I'm still talking about it. That's a spoiler. Inner Cell has good bass, but then we get into Loyalty with the legendary thing. But it's another one where it's tying. It's mostly an 11/8, and it's so groovy in that 11/8. You don't feel it as a listener. It just feels like a normal song, as much as you can on Polygon Wonderland. And we go into Horology. Horology's got probably my favorite bass on the album. Well, at least just personally. I spent hours and hours learning this song at the beginning. I wanted to get it right, and I liked how it had enough staccato in it where I didn't have to worry about having perfect legato. That's where every note perfectly connects into each other. It's like the bum 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 bum. Like I can, you could take time in between notes to get to the next note. So it was good for that. With the getting into the groove and the. I also just love the song in general. I think Horology's bass line in particular is brilliant though. And Texture Chromos, I gotta keep moving. Okay, I can talk about the rest of the songs, but I need to. Sketches of Brunswick East. Oh. I was talking about Polygon Wonderland, forgetting that this song was eventually going to be coming up. This is bass. It's a bass gem. It's beautiful. It doesn't have any, you're not going to, you hear someone play Deserted Dunes and you're like, wow, that sounds fast and difficult. But the songs on here, Dusk to Dawn on Lygon Street, that's a Cookie song. It seems like something that he would play too, but that's a speculation. That's a beautiful bass riff. The bum ba da da dum ba ba dum ba da da dum ba boom ba da ba dum ba ba dum ba da da dum da 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 da. Freaking voice. That's in the Dorian mode. Cookie loves using the Dorian mode. It's used a lot in funk. Every Red Hot Chili Pepper song uses Dorian. It's it's a minor scale, but there's this note called the sixth, and you move that up a little bit. So it's a mixture of happy sad, and you get to play around with it how you want. Actually, no, Dusted Dawn on Lygon Street also has the minor thing. If you're music pilled, maybe be interested in that, but I gotta move on. Dusted Dawn on Lygon Street, that's a catchy bass riff, you're gonna remember it. But there's the bass on Tezita is just classic. I play that almost every day and never get tired of it. It's one of the times where they use this ascending tritone pattern in main riffs. They use it a few times, like a Real's Not Real, which is gonna come back up later, which I really enjoy the feeling of. But the bass ties together so many of these songs. Countdown, I can't imagine what it would be like without the bass guiding it along. It's the main character on Cranes, Planes, and Migraines. That seems like a bass composition, with car sounds in the background, just a couple of riffs, but it drives it along, and it's that 7/8. It's so much tension built into it. And there's beautiful bass tracks on here, like The Spider in Me, which that has a lot of, if you're trying to learn how to play it, it's a lot of arpeggiating just power chords, the root fifth power chord, so a lot of it's not that difficult, but it's beautiful to listen to. I visited my family this weekend, and I brought my bass down. and I was like, I know one song that they're gonna love, and I played The Spider in Me, and I was not wrong. I think that, yeah, like I said, the bass on this album, it's just a bass, it's a bass gem. And between this and the next album, these are the two albums that are the reason why I wanted to make this tier list in general. I think the Gumboot Soup and Sketches of Brunswick East get the short shrift, the short end of the stick in most situations when talking about Gizz. But do you know where they don't struggle at all? In bass. If you haven't paid attention to the bass for Gumboot Soup before, you gotta, and if you're gonna be listening to Gizz anytime soon, you gotta try it. The bass on Gumboot Soup is incredible. The beginner's luck, the it doesn't sound good. There's like a whole bass solo in the middle of beginner's luck. It's played twice. Then Greenhouse Heat Death. Let's skip that one. Okay. Barefoot Desert. That's Cookie. Definitely Cookie playing that one. He's playing a fretless bass there. He does this thing that you can recognize if you've. He does it on other songs too, for Gizz, but then he also does a lot of bass on the Murlocs, which is an ambi Cookie side project. I respect him. We're not talking about Murlocs here, but he does this like quick ascension, and then back into the. Whenever you hear that like ascension and descension like that, that's always Cookie. It's his trademark. I know that. Yeah, I can't vocalize it too well. I'm sorry, but Barefoot Desert has insane fretless bass. It's a great time. Muddy Water. It's a repetitive riff that he plays through a lot of it. But it sets you on the swashbuckling vibe, right? The bum 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 bum. Like you can feel yourself on the ship as the guitars are rising and falling. It's I know that one's simple, but I love the bass to Muddy Water. Without the bass to Muddy Water, I don't know how much I'd like it. Then we have Lukey's favorite King Gizzard bass song. That's right, that's on Gumboot Soup too. And that's Superposition. Superposition. This is a song you listen to for the bass. I personally think the way that it's achieved, it has a droning F, and the low string on a bass is an E. So if you tune it up a half step, you get this F, and that's what's droning through a lot of the song. And he laments that he can't ever play it live. They'll never play it live. And you know what? If I went to a Gizz concert and they played Superposition, and be like, could have gotten Iron Lung in that time, maybe. So, but I'd still be happy to hear it. Superposition's got great. It's great bass. Then we have another Cookie song, Down the Sink. Down the Sink. This is the main bass line. That's just climbing and descending that Dorian scale. This is which is what I mentioned. Cookie loves his Dorian. Down the Sink. That's a catchy bass line. I love playing it. It's a fun riff, and you know that you're bopping to it. Even if you're the kind of person who thinks that you don't hear bass, you're hearing the Down the Sink bass line. You're popping to it. Great chain of being. I love the Great Chain of Being. The Last Oasis is another Sketches of Brunswick East, kind of where it's simple. There's not a ton of notes played, but it at least sets you into the vibe of the song. I'm trying to keep from breaking into falsetto. You can hear how hard it is for me to hit a bass note out of nowhere. I've got to get out of Gumboot Soup. Okay, I talked about Gumboot Soup enough. It's got its just desserts. It's at the top of the list. We'll see if it gets past. Now, after Gumboot Soup, it's not like they forgot how to write good bass. And Fishing for Fishies, this is another album that I re-listened to yesterday to try to get a better feel for the bass of it. Because I could remember it on a number of songs, and I know how to play a few of them, but I forgot what it was like on the Bird song and Boogeyman Sam. as well. But Fishing for Fishies has a great walking bass line to start it off. Boogeyman Sam, the bass to this, it boogies. And I was listening to a live version of it, and Lukey was improvising on it like crazy, and making it, yeah, every time he played it, it was different. It was recontextualizing a lot of the ideas of the song. I think that he's really locked in when he plays Boogeyman Sam, and I wish that when they played it live, it wasn't 15 minutes long personally, but I'm glad that Lukey's there holding down the fort, giving me something that I can enjoyably listen to no matter what. After that, we got the Bird song, which has good bass. Plastic Boogie has the in it, which is pretty good. And it's, I don't know. I can play Plastic Boogie. It's so much fun to just mash the just that root note during the fuck all of that plastic. I know it sounds hypocritical, right? We hit 12 bar blues, and I'm like, you're just hitting root notes. But then for stuff like Plastic Boogie, because it has the other more interesting elements added to it, in that the band's just going so hard, locked into that. I think it's a great song too. That part hitting that root note feels so good. And Real's Not Real has I have to avoid doing it. It's so full of diminished walks. I can't replicate that vocally. But you should listen to the bass to Real's Not Real if you haven't before. It's one of the best. It's walking like crazy. It has a whole voice of its own. I'm so curious as to who wrote it and what, like, I'm not one of the guys who just like, they must have been on drugs when they were doing that, but like, what mental state were they in when they wrote that bass line? I have a theory that whoever wrote the bass to Real's Not Real also wrote Automation. Well, we'll get back to Automation now. The bass to Automation. But we'll get back to that. This thing has some fun, groovy bass fills in it that I completely forgot about. Acarine, it holds down, as I keep saying, it holds down the fort. There's crazy polyrhythmic stuff going on. I think that the bass on Fishing for Fishies is bass. That's some bass. I might end up putting it above Nonagon. I'm gonna do it, and then I can come back to it. Okay. So this is Infest the Rat's Nest. Infest the Rat's Nest, probably one of my more overrated albums personally, but ironically, I'm probably gonna comparatively underrate it as a bass album. Obviously, this has Mars for the Rich, which is maybe the bass song that put, the song that put King Gizz bass on the map the most, particularly for the famed guitar solo, bass solo near the end. What am I saying right now, man? I can almost like play it, call it a guitar solo. There's some fun bass parts on here, like I think Superbug has some pretty fun bass parts. It got some like Sleep Al Cisneros inspired vibe on there. And obviously, a lot of this is technically difficult. Other highlights from here are the Venusian 1 and Venusian 2. The bass on those songs is what pulled me into them first, because after my first few listens, I was like, those are the weakest songs on the album. I skip them. I want my perihelion. I want my self-immolate. But the bass on there, on Venusian 1 and 2 is pretty good. I think it's emblematic of, some of the riffs on there are a little emblematic of what the bass is going to become in PDA a few years later. But personally, the bass kind of, it's tracking the guitars. It doesn't add too much for me personally. One of the compelling things I think that Gizz does that makes the bass on their metal albums actually good is Lukey plays mostly in like the mid-range. So like you're hearing something like most Metallica stuff, you're banging the low E string, like the 0 on the low E all the time. That's your chug. But for like Mars for the Rich, he's playing a whole octave higher. So like the Mars for the Rich riff, you could play that on a guitar, like a standard guitar. It would be the lowest note on the guitar, but it's doable. And the guitars that Stu and Joey and Cookie are playing are actually super down-tuned too. So they're almost playing at the same audible range, which I think it lends to it, I mean, given how much I love the albums, it obviously it lends to it. I'm gonna put I can't believe I nearly just put it in. It's got bass. I'm gonna put it here. There. Now we're getting on to Butterfly 3000. Butterfly 3000 is my, that's not how the albums came out in order. I apologize. Let's get to KG. So I alluded to in the past, when I brought up Flying Microtonal Banana, that the band was very limited. Well, at least the bass was extremely limited because they didn't have a microtonal bass instrument. Unfortunately, by KGLW, that didn't suddenly manifest. They didn't obtain a microtonal bass just yet. But these were the albums that were recorded during COVID, so when they were all at home. And what that means, in particular, is that our Lord and Savior Stu McKenzie wrote almost all the bass, from what I understand. I don't know how much Joey would have written. They don't share all this, and I'm not researching all of it and memorizing it, but a lot of it was actually written on MIDI, which, as a bass player, sad. I wish that it was played on an actual bass, like an actual bass on the studio recordings, but by it being on MIDI, they were able to use whatever microtonal notes they wanted, and as such, the KG and LW albums have incredibly compelling bass lines. As a bass player, because of their microtonal nature, and then really it's just it's the brainchild of what came out of Stu's head, rather than something that someone made with their meaty, that a normal human made with their own meaty fingers. So like Automation, if you listen to that song, that's got that's like Real Is Not Real. It goes off. The bass just it plays so many. Like it's going up and down, it's arpeggiating, it's going between chords, and it's not stopping. It's like the craziest walking bass line I've ever heard. I wish it was a little louder just because of that, so people would acknowledge it more. The bass to Automation goes insane. Maybe one day I'll learn how to play it. I love it. I when I listen to Automation, which is a song I love, I pay attention to the bass most often, and then I'll listen to it again and I'll pay attention to everything else. Minimum Brain Size. This is a Joey song, and the bass on this feels like it might be Joey as well. The highlight of I can play this one, not perfectly, but the highlight of this song for me is at the beginning of the chorus. You do a big slide like this, bow, ba ba da, ba da ba da bow, and having a repeated slide motif, a slow slide motif in a song is so badass. There's some good fills and such in here too, and as a Joey song, I one of the reasons why I think it's Joey, he's a lover of the minor pentatonic scale, and he can use it so well. And like the minor pentatonic scale, that's like the kind of like the blues scale. It's one of the simplest scales you can learn. It's the first one. A lot of people, they learn it and they don't go too far beyond it, but I think he uses it brilliantly, and Minimum Brain Size is an example of that. The bass adds a lot to the song, and it helps hold down those insane guitar parts too. The Straws in the Wind, that's the repeated like it's a good one. Intrasport, the bass gives you that. It helps establish that like almost Bollywood vibe. Like it's a simple like a boom bum 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 bum, but I know that I've seen people do covers of Intrasport. So if it's that simple and that boring, why are people doing covers of it? How many people are doing covers to Oh No, I Call Mom or whatever off of 12 by Bruce? Then I gotta talk about Honey a little bit. That's such a happy, groovy bass line. The doom 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 like that whole thing. If I'm not mistaken, the song's in 7, and that bass line is groovy. It's happy in a song that's 7, and it helps affirm it as like this happy sounding love song. You know, the You Taste Like Honey, all warm and funny. Uh, the bass line to Honey is one of the first ones that I learned, for sure. I think it's a great bass song. Uh, ah, I'm going here. LW. LW, if you're familiar with my album tier list, is it's my most underrated album of theirs. I was listening to one of the recent shows and they played East West Link, and I forgot what the name of the song was, and I've never done that in the past year with this band. I don't know if you can tell, I kind of like them, but uh, when I was going through it, the bass line's similar to KG because of the MIDI ability and like a lot of it being the brainchild of Stu. There's some brilliant work on here, and it really helps. Like static electricity is just like perfect microtonal jam material, and the bass drives it along great. My favorite off of this is Pleura. Pleura is the main bam 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 bam. That's another Joey song. I was watching a interview with Lukey and Sarek basses, and he noted that this is one of his favorite lines that he really likes to play as well. It's the really quick trilling is so fun. The odd time signatures, the microtonal nature of Pleura. It's that's a good bass song right there. And I also really love KGLW off the end here, like the main riff, that blah 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 blah. But that song is just going from time signature to time signature. There was a video called Lukey's Rig on the King Gizzard channel. Lukey, Cavs, and Joey, all three of them have videos where it shows. It was like at the time, right? Like I'm sure that it's changed since then. I know for Lukey it has these different basses, but it was showing their rig setups, and they were playing through a couple things. The best one's definitely Joey. He tries to he's teaching you how to play minimum brain size, but really he's just fucking with you the whole time. It's a good watch, but Lukey was teaching KGLW, and the whole time he's like counting, and he's just, you can get the sense just like I don't know how they make up a lot of this stuff as he's counting and trying to play along to the riff. He's doing, to the song. He's doing it well. The riffage in KGLW is great, and it's another song where the complexity of the music that they're doing, you can't tell without really digging into it because of how well it's all tied together. Cavs is I'm talking about the bass, but I love Cavs. He's the reason why that song ties together most. But then the bass really helps make you feel natural. You get to feel the intended groove throughout, and it's not jarring. I think the bass on LW is fantastic. I'm gonna put them right next to each other. It looks nice, you know. You get the contrast, and if you have a problem with that, come at me. Speaking of having a problem, we're about to talk about Butterfly 3000. Butterfly 3000, I see this in like the S tier of people's tier lists on Reddit. I listen to it every couple months, just like this time it's gonna like really hit me. But I really like a lot of songs on here. I love Catching Smoke. I love Shanghai. It's just it doesn't, for my favorite band of all time, it just doesn't hit me in the same way that a lot of the other albums do. So going through it, a lot of the bass lines on here are relatively simplistic and happy to guide you along. Like Shanghai's like bum, ba bum, ba bum bum. Like it's kind of that vibe throughout it. Boom, bum. So there's not too much going on with it. I'm gonna do a little bit of. I'm gonna put a little. It's not rage bait. I gotta at least, you gotta, for the thumbnail, okay? It belongs in bass, probably above, definitely above Eyes Like the Sky. It has pretty good bass, but I gotta put in a little bit of rage bait, okay? A little bit of rage bait. Honestly, is that, I probably shouldn't put this Maiden Timeline on the list. I don't remember what the bass is like in that. I'm just gonna, it might be synth, it might not be. I'd love, if you know, please tell me. And if it's really good, also please tell me, because then I'll listen to it, I'll pay attention to the bass, and I'll come back, and I promise I'll be a changed man. I like to think I've got an open, strong mind when it comes to listening for bass. Omnium Gatherium. So, Omnium Gatherium, this album opens with like a mini bass solo with the dripping tap, like the way that it opens while Ambi's doing the blood rain in time. It's a great opening fill. I know Lucas, he's like even done like a short just to show how to play it. It's as a bass lover, it's a fantastic way to start it off. Dripping tap, it's got some decent jamming bass in it. More than Head On Pill, but the deviation in it isn't insane. Got the repetitive riff, like my favorite repetitive riff that they've done, Kepler 22B, is on this. The love that. Ambergris is on here. That's another Joey song. I don't know if it's a Joey bass song or not. To me, I think Ambergris is probably Lukey, because this album marks Omnium Gatherium marks when Lukey starts, occasionally when the song calls for it, he does pulls, like pops. He does it with a pick. I don't know how, because I'm a fingerstyle player, so I know I'm getting into the weeds. Okay, but so what I mean by pop is like you have the normal note, but then there's ones where like if you're playing with your fingers, you dig under it and you pull on it, and it goes bop. And it's what's used for slaps, like the boom boom tap. And Ambergris is I think the first song that Gizz has where it has pops, and they're not used constantly. I don't know if you've listened to Men I Trust; they use pops in the same way pretty frequently, but it's like emphasis on particular notes. And the bass in Ambergris is beautiful. It guides you along. Those pops really add so much to the funk. There's so many skipped beats and syncopations in this thing. It's a gorgeous bass track. This album also famously has their two rap songs, and I like the bass on both of them. Like even though it's simple, like the bum, 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 bum. Like it's groovy. It sets you in, and you just like you hear that, and you're just like, okay, Andy, bring it on. Bring your 97-year-old grandmother. I hope she's doing well. Singing the title of the song. I love it. Blame It on the Weather, which is in 7/4. That's like a song I could show my parents where they'd be like, oh, this reminds me of songs I listened to as a kid. That song's in 7/4. Got jammy bass on there, great jammy bass. Persistence. This is a song that I theorized to be Cookies, because at one point it has the but the main riff is also pretty fun, like the I enjoy the bass to Persistence. It's basic, it's simple, but it fits the song pretty well. Presumptuous, that's another one where we've got those pops. Yeah, it really, the bass on there really helps set into like the Oye Como Va sort of vibes, but I prefer the bass on this. I think the pops have more personality, the note choice is better, so on, and got some fun vibes given from Candles later on. Let's probably move on. I've gotta say, Omnium Theory's got some bass. I don't know if I should put it higher than that. The exact ranking doesn't exactly much, especially Now, every time I make one of these, I'm going to be overrating. Probably overrating. You call it overrating. I call it you underrating. Ice Death, lungs, mushroom, planets, lungs, mushrooms, and lava. The bass on this album. Let me just go over how this album works again. So, Ice Death is an album. They recorded it in a week, and the way that it works is it's taking the major scale. So, if you know music, there's the major. I mean, what am I talking about? You've heard of the major scale. There's the major scale, and there's 7 modes of the major scale, meaning that if you start the major scale from a different note, it has a different mode. And each of those modes has different uses and different vibes. So I've alluded to the Dorian mode a few times as one that Cookie likes to use. That's like a funky one. And then like the minor scale, that's the 6th mode of the major scale. So that's just the note. It's the same notes, they're just played in a different order with a different like home note. That's the general idea of Ice Death. So each of these songs, it goes through each of the modes of the major scale, and it's just jamming to each of them. These songs, if we're talking about the bass on them, there's the studio versions and then there's the live versions where Lukey's he's in it and he's jamming. And he's, as I mentioned, like he's listening to his bandmates because he's a good musician. You pieces of crap, and he and he's recontextualizing so many the ideas of the songs and making them his own and adding them to the music. It's if you listen to a live version of any of the Ice Death songs, I recommend paying attention to the bass if you haven't paid attention to them on the studio cuts to begin with. But the jam, like the bass lines themselves, aren't as memorable, like as like a Mind Fuzz riff or something, because they're not as repetitive due to the nature of the songs. But the bass on Ice 5, Magma, Hell's Itch, and Iron Lung, all 4 of those songs, those are 10 out of 10 bass songs for me. My Lord and Savior of bass, his name is Amadeo S. I subscribe to him on YouTube. He's done most of the Gizz tabs on the website. I told him if he comes back, I'd pay him to make a tab. And he came back a couple months ago with Crumbling Castle, and I paid for him to do Magma. Magma, the idea is not you follow the tab verbatim, but it gives you the ideas, the tools in the toolbox for how, like the general ways that Lukey's jamming on that song and what you can do with it. Oh, I'm not talking too much about this, but that's because if you've ever been here before, you know where that's going. Changes. When I think of changes in bass, the first thing I think about is AstroTurf. Because like I heard the lead single, I got the day that it came out. I didn't know about AstroTurf, and I turned it on. It's just like, this is a flute, drum, and bass song where it's just solos for a flute and a drum and a bass. And I was in tears, not actually, almost in tears as to how beautiful I thought it was. I can listen to AstroTurf as a bassist all day, every day. But I can go into the structure of this one real quick. The general idea of changes is that it's just switching between 2 chords. That's like the whole idea of the song. It was intended to be one like 40-minute long song, like Jethro Tull's "Thick as a Brick," but what am I talking about? Why? But it was intended to be one 40-minute long song, but they couldn't do it back in 2017. They ended up breaking it up into a number of smaller songs, and I would have liked to hear the full one, but I love the result. I love Changes as an album. Probably comparatively too much, but I think it's brilliant. And one of the reasons why is because every time it's changing chords, it's actually changing the key of the song. So it's changing key both times, and that's why some of that's why that main that's why that's so memorable, is because it's changing keys and it's got those weird jazzy notes thrown in there because of it. And I think that the bass on this album plays with that theme very well. There's moments of change, of course, where it's just going between those 2 bass notes, and It's going to be doing that throughout it. But there's like AstroTurf, obviously. He's jamming like crazy on that idea. And if you haven't seen Sleeping Monster, is that what it was called? Where it's got the video of the live take of Change, where it shows Stu like switching between two keyboards and guitar and the guitar because he's like God. Every time it goes to Lukey, he's jamming. Okay, he's feeling Change, and the bass on Change is great. We've got a lot more of those pops like I was talking about on this, on Hate Dancing. They come up a good bit. I think that, yeah, the Change has great bass. Hate Dancing has fantastic bass. AstroTurf is killer. I really like the bass on Nobody as well. Nobody is a song I jokingly call my permanent replacement to Hotel California, so I never have to listen to the Eagles again. No, that's a little dismissive of the Eagles and Hotel California. It's got decent bass, that song too, but Nobody's got great bass too. And the closing song, I don't know, does Gandhi technically have it? I'm not sure. Exploding Suns, that's just a calm back and forth, and then the psychotic release of Short Change at the end. Either way, the first 4 songs though are enough. What the are enough for this to be in bass tier here. Yeah, I'm putting it there. I'm moving Changes up really high. What are you gonna do about it? Laminated Denim. This is there's the 2 songs, The Land Before Timeland and Hypertension. These are 2 15-minute long, also jammy style tracks. Hypertension. I listen to Land Before Timeline every once in a while, and I listen to Hypertension all the time. So I'm mostly going to be talking about that. I know that there's a lot of Land Before Timeline stands out there. I'm not trying to offend you. I hope it's very clear that I love this band a lot. So I hope that you can forgive me. There's Hypertension has a lot of good fills amidst the somewhat repetitive jamming. A lot of interesting ideas in it, but overall, it's one song. And if you're going to be playing for 15 minutes, you better have some pretty good ideas for it. As an album, I rated it higher, but as just a one piece, I don't know what my ranking is here. I don't know what I'm doing. What's going on here? I'm gonna do that. Gotta split it up a little bit more. I might move a little bit more down, try to even it out. But finally here, we have Metro Dragonic Apocalypse. To immediately piss you off, in my tier list of all their albums as a whole, I put this as my second favorite of theirs, below Ice Death. I'm a big fan of their jammy tracks and the ones that, when you start it, even if you've listened to it before, you're just like, I know where it's going, I can hear it, but I don't know how we're even gonna get there. And then they show you how you get there for all these massive songs. Like Motor Spirit, it's 8.5 minutes of pure unbridled insanity. It's got like 6 parts. You go on such a journey with it. There's so many moments on this album where you get, unlike which didn't happen on Infest the Rat's Nest, where like the band cuts out and it's just the bass and the drums, like Witchcraft, bum 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 bum. Or my favorite is the one on Dragon, the boy, but I can't do it. I can't do it in my head. They're too fast for me to play, and I also play fingerstyle, so I can't play with a pick. But if you've listened to these albums, and this album, you know what I'm talking about. There's that moment on Motor Spirit. There's the moment, Witchcraft, Dragon. They all have those bass moments. They're all incredible. They set you up for the next part of the song, and they lock you in, and it's a testament to how good bass on metal albums can be. You know, that's famously metal albums don't love their bassists. They tend not to, but this album is one that definitely does. Very similar to Infest the Rat's Nest, we have a lot of that mid-rangey playing. Again, while the guitars are tuned down way low, the bass is playing higher on the bass, like an octave higher than it needs to, which to me adds a lot to the feel of the song. songs. When I was visiting my family and I was playing the bass, I didn't have a song on, and I was like piecing together the Gila Monster. I can do it better. It's an arpeggio. It's a diminished arpeggio, which has a tritone, so it's a little nasty. It's just climbing and descending it. But my brother walked by, he was going like the swung vibe of a lot of these bass riffs it's captivating as well. I think that this album has bass that's a huge step up from Infest the Rat's Nest. It's catchy. Like those just the moments where it drops out and it's just the bass that you hear are great. There's a bunch of motifs that are tossed like throughout the album and brought back up. Like if you listen to Flamethrower, the bum 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 bum, like the witchcraft bass stuff comes back in again. I'm not gonna put this in the top tier. Don't worry. I'm not gonna do that. It's also incredibly fast playing that I wish that I could do on this, but I think that there's some bass on Petrodragonic Apocalypse. Okay, I'm gonna put it here above Nonagon. Now, if I'm gonna move 2 down to the tier below, no, if I can see everything, this looks good enough to me. Should I? What? Here's a 1-string bass. Is this good for a thumbnail? I think that this is good for a thumbnail. I apologize. This is the worst part of all these. I gotta get the thumbnail at runtime, because once I close out of this, I'm gonna lose the tier list forever. And if I don't have the tier list in the thumbnail, my engagement goes way down from 20 views to 2. So let's see. Is there anything I think that I need to change? Bass. Oh, it feels so. A lot of this feels like slander. You're gonna see this. People are gonna see this thumbnail and be like, "What the shit is going on?" No. I messed up. What do I do? Maybe I should put myself here. I apologize. There we go. Thinking face, 1-string bass in the background. That's 62 minutes of talking about the bass of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, attempting to recreate bass lines just out of thin air with my voice, which went so much worse than I anticipated. It was going to much better with the instrument, but it's really hard to play music on camera when you're not confident you'll be able to pull it out. And like trying to remember what all these lines are. Well, if there are any huge disagreements that you have, feel free to tell me. This is kind of a personal list, and it's not something that I've seen before. But I'd love to see other musicians do the drum album tier lists for them and the guitar tier lists. Drum ones I'd anticipate would be heavily 2022 and on focused, or post Eric. I'll enjoy Eric, but Cav has really kicked it up afterwards. But in the end, my biggest takeaway, if you haven't paid attention to the bass in Gumboot Soup or Sketches of Brunswick East, you gotta give them a try. The bass on those 2 albums is incredible, particularly Gumboot Soup. It blows my mind, and I wish that I paid attention to it more when it came out, and maybe I would have picked up the bass earlier than last year as a 27-year-old man. But either way, or 26 at the time. Either way, I had a fun time making this bass tier list, and I hope that you had a good time watching. I hope that you have a great weekend if you're watching this in real time, which you're not, or just a week in general, whenever you're watching this. And I'll see you next time. See ya.